Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. I'm Gabrielle Martin, your host for this evening. And if you're joining us for the first time, Open Your Eyes to the Universe is a series of contemporary talks and conversations, open-eyed meditations, and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others just by sharing their wisdom, their insights, and experiences to co-create a better world. And as we begin our episode tonight, the Youniverse team acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and we also extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. And I'd also like to acknowledge and respect the wise elder within us all and the collective wisdom of all those here this evening. In our last episode, we were exploring silence power with long-time meditation expert Sister Mira Nagananda, and she shared her wisdom on using the spiritual power of silence to connect with oneself as an inner being and also to connect with the divine. She talked about its capacity to positively transform oneself, to influence the transformation of others, and also to heal our world. And so here we are tonight, and we are in this company of sacred soprano Heather Lee and composer-performer Professor Kim Cunio. And our topic this evening is music and inner life. We'll explore how music can both be a doorway to meditative states and deeper consciousness, as well as a guide to healing and transformation. So let's begin this sonic journey into serenity by introducing our two speakers. Heather is a soprano with a speciality in early and cross-cultural music. Her projects include performances at the UN and the White House, the Grammy long-listed album Beyond Karma with Goto Monks of Tibet, Sweet Dreams, the ABC Classics and the Sydney Opera House, Ishek, a CD and installation for the Karlini Collection of Islamic Art at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, Songs to Ra, Egyptian Antiquities Exhibition from the Louvre, Mandala for Dawn, an orchestral and choir work commissioned and performed in New York, The Thread of Life, an international ensemble in New York and the US release, or for US release, The Sacred Fire, an ABC commission to sing the music of the first woman composer, Hildegard of Bingen, and numerous concerts and recordings, often with composer Kim Cunio, who is also with us here tonight. Her recent highlights include the Pushkar Sacred Music Festival, a concert project for the United Nations in New York, and a special award from the Government of India honouring her for singing of Gandhi's favourite bhajan, Vaishnavayana 2. And Heather also opened Prime Minister Modi's Confluence Festival in Australia. You might have been at that. And worked with Teamworks Arts, New Zealand's leading production company. Sorry, that's India's leading production company. And she performed a show based on Swami Vivekananda at the Sydney Opera House. She sung the score for the Maharaja of Jaipur's Sacred Art Collection, which toured to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, the Smithsonian and the British Museum. I find that incredibly amazing. What huge accomplishments in terms of one's career. Now let me focus on Kim. Professor Kim Cunio was the head of music of school at the Australian National University during 2019 to 2023. And he's presently the head of the New Zealand School of Music. Kim is a composer, a performer, and a researcher. And he's interested in old and new musics and the role of music in making sense of our larger world. Kim's compositions have been played at the White House, the United Nations, and concerts and festivals in many countries. Commissioning organisations include the Sydney 2000 Olympics, the Art Gallery of New South Wales, the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, the International Arts Festival, and the Foundation for Universal Sacred Music USA. Kim is working on a series of albums with the Goto Monks of Tibet, a project setting the sounds of space in a series of new works combining Western music and acoustic ecology. Breathtaking, isn't it? Kim publishes regularly and also writes about music for the deans and directors of the creative arts and the Crawford Centre for Public Policy at the ANU. Kim also has a regular segment on ABC Radio, you might have heard it, to discuss music and the larger word, and also hosts a daily half-hour TV show on Indian television for the Awakening channel, where he interviews Charlie Hogg about spiritual matters. Kim's been collaborating with scientists for decades and is part of the Sounds of Space project housed at the British Antarctic Survey. So both Heather and Kim have a long-standing daily commitment to the practice of daily meditation. And with their outstanding careers in the field of music, they're well placed, I reckon, to explore with us the interconnectedness between music, meditation, and inner life. Both Heather and Kim are presently living in Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's a joy to have both of you with us on Youniverse tonight. So thanks for coming along and joining us. Nā mai, haere mai. And I think it's probably about 8 p.m. for you in New Zealand. Is that right?
That's yes, right. It is. And kia ora from New Zealand and yama in one of our many Aboriginal languages.
Yes, kia ora, everyone.
It's really lovely to see you both. We've been missing you from us over here in Australia, so it's very nice to catch up with you in New Zealand. Heather, a hugely impressive career, and I hope I didn't stumble across it. It was a lot of cultural diversity in the things that you've accomplished in terms of your music, and so much diversity, but also remarkable achievements. Earlier this year, I heard you sing Ave Maria at Wayfinders, Ordinary People Changing the World, in the Sydney Opera House, and you were accompanied by Kim. At the time, I was backstage, and yet I felt that the entire opera house opened up when you sang, and I certainly found it really mesmerizing. So as we start, I'd love our audience to see what you were doing there, how you were singing. So let's watch this short clip taken from the live recording. It's Ave Maria, and Heather sung that at Wayfinders in the Sydney Opera House. Mhm. I don't know how you're feeling listening to you sing that again, but I've listened to it many times, and I have to say that each time I get these goosebumps of emotion. I feel like it's so rich and so deep. And there's such a presence or a vibration in your voice, Heather. So I wondered if you could begin our conversation this evening by sharing with us a little bit about how your inner life influences your singing and how your singing influences and enriches your inner life.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. It's the first time I've seen that clip. So yeah, I found myself clearing my throat, getting ready. So in me, in my body, that song. So yeah. So I guess my inner life before I went on to sing that aria in the opera house, I had to very much focus in on my inner life. It was a bit tiny bit sort of chaotic behind the scenes, and we were just waiting to go on, and um, I had to calm myself, my inner life, my inner, rather than going out there, because I was about to go out there to the opera house and very much sing my inner life. So um, that's so. And what was the second half of your question, Gabrielle?
Yeah, I was looking to see. I mean, I can remember backstage, you and Kim both had an incredible presence actually, and I noted how very, very calm you were because um, you were about to go on and sing, and the schedule of events got a little bit interrupted, and you had both had to wait back, and yet. What I noted in it was how you really held your presence, how you held your inner space. And I find that to be remarkable, actually, that you could do that. I'm not sure that all musicians manage that in such a calm way when their schedule, gets interrupted like that. But you held that presence. Um, and when I listened to you sing, Heather, I did very much feel a sense of sacredness in what you were singing. And it was like there was a vibration that was coming through you as you sung. And I wondered at the time, is this the influence of meditation and your daily practice of meditation coming through in your singing? And and I almost wondered, at one point I thought, I wonder what she's feeling, because I certainly know what I'm feeling listening to her and singing in the opera house.
Oh, well, actually, to be singing, I know personally with my own singing, like classical singing, I am really, it's very physical.
Yeah.
I'm harnessing my body so I can reach those top notes and those low notes and make it sound as, hopefully a beautiful, give people a beautiful experience. So, but also because it's sacred music, it's totally channeling Ave Maria, the feminine energy. Um, that's how I feel. I'm feeling, I'm channeling, I'm just the medium for what I was singing. Absolutely. It's like it's coming from above and going through me and then going out again. So
Right.
it's,
That's incredible, actually. And I love the way that you're talking about it as if you're channeling and it's moving through you, because I didn't know that you were doing that, but certainly I felt that. It seemed to me that the whole opera house was opening up when you were singing. It was reaching out and, descending through you and moving out into the whole and creating an amazing atmosphere, actually, too. So, Heather, tell us, how did you get to sing like that? Where did it all start for you?
well, it's funny. I was just preparing for this talk. I just wanted to give you a few key moments in my childhood that I think influenced me musically, and also um, came into my inner life. And so I remember my first ever memory as this soul was when I was 4, and I was entertaining the neighbors. And I remember being sat, someone picked me up and put me on a very high stool in the front of our house, and there were kids everywhere sitting down cross-legged. And I remember the feeling of loving being there and singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Oh, wow.
Great song. So I did. I sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and I felt very calm and happy to be singing it. And I felt that the kids really appreciated it. No one was calling out, "Get her off," or anything. It was just a really nice experience.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, I'd like more of that. And possibly I sang it in tune. So, I think the vibration was nice. I possibly was quite melodious. And then at the same time, my mother had a record collection
Mm.
of opera, of divas singing Mozart, Puccini, Verdi, and all. And she loved Joan Sutherland, this great Australian
Yeah,
soprano.
yeah.
And all my siblings were at school, and so I'd be home with my mum, and she would turn it up, turn turn the volume up, and I'd be sitting in the living room playing, or actually, I do remember daydreaming and listening to this beautiful, the orchestra. I remembered more the composition of the pieces, and just felt when we're talking about inner life, I felt whatever it is, I'm going into that space, that inner life, and digesting it and being with it. And I felt the vibration of it. And yeah, that was it. That was so that went on for a few years. And yeah, then when it like a at primary school, I would be the one that would be requested to sing um, the latest hit, top of the charts, top of the pops. So
Right.
I must have been really like obsessed, listening to the
Yeah.
radio constantly to know all the words of everything. Uh,
Mm.
um, like my inner life was learning songs and listening, and then performing the songs on the top of the steps. I remember the Bee Gees, or whatever it was that um, and I would imitate too. So the comedian in me came out. So yeah,
Yeah. And so you were under 12 when you were doing all of this? You were a
yeah,
child. Wow.
child,
Yeah.
7,
So
8,
7 and 8.
yeah,
So it was there within you from, well, from 4 is your first, the first experience that you remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And also at that age, my grandmother
Mm.
told me that her her sister-in-law was an opera singer, and she used to tell me she used to tell me tales about this wonderful lady that toured the world and toured to India. She used to tour to India, and she died there. And I remember that's the part I remember, that she died. She left her body in India because she got malaria, and and that's the part, the gruesome part for me. But wow,
Yeah.
yeah, this wonderful woman, this opera singer. So, and actually, right now, I'm preparing. Kim and I are preparing a show about that lady.
Ah, right. Your sister-in-law. Yeah.
My grandmother's,
Your grandmother's.
my grandmother's my grandmother. No, yeah, sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah, sister-in-law. That's right.
Your
Thanks.
grandmother's
Yeah.
sister-in-law. So
Yeah.
you come from an incredibly rich family background of um, people with incredible voices. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's just interesting, isn't it? There's an opera singer back there that sort of once removed that was there, and that she did travel to India, and then I'd been to India so many times going to my ashram there in up on Mount Abu, so it's just sort of wonderful. It's like a very sort of cathartic and very wholesome experience for me personally to be stepping into the shoes of her.
Yeah, true. And she was such a role model for you and someone that
Hmm.
you wanted to know about. And now you're actually tell
Yeah.
us what you're going to be doing. You're going to be singing her music. You're going to be what are you doing?
Oh,
What's
well,
the project about?
she, so it is about Ada Parsons, and
Mm.
she travels all around India. She goes to the different cities, and she talks about how wonderful it is. It's in the Raj, and so she talks about it, and she sings beautiful arias, and then she meets an Indian gentleman, and then they kind of fall in love, and then he teaches her passages from the Gita, and she has this. And he's a nationalist, so she's wondering why she's sort of turning away from the Raj and going more into independence, really. And and she sings some beautiful Shiva songs, and just it's a whole spiritual experience for her. And so it's really nice to be able to step into her shoes and do
And
this.
yeah, and a spiritual experience for you too, doing it as you retrace her steps and isn't it? Yeah, that's quite remarkable. There must be a lovely connection between the two of you on that soul level that you're doing this. Yeah.
It definitely is, yeah.
Um, Tell us a little bit about the channeling that you experience when you're singing.
Okay, well,
Mm.
sort of a good example of that would be the music of Saint Hildegard von Bingen. So
Yeah.
she was a 12th century abbess, but she was also a composer, like amazing. So she notated and scored her uh, sh compositions, and I mean, they survive. And the music is absolutely incredible. And I find that every time I sing her music, it's complete golden light channeling, and um, it's just sort of very healing for me. And I think it is very healing for anyone else that happens to be listening to that. Um, there's so many people have sung her music, and there's so many great recordings out there. Kim and I did a double album of hers with the ABC some years back.
Mm.
So I really have worked quite extensively on her music and the channeling because Hildegard, was absolutely in love with the Lord Jesus, and just flowed through her veins. And so the music that she wrote, um, it's in every cell of every note.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
And it
And you're well
transforms
placed
your
to
body.
sing it.
Hmm?
And you're well placed to sing it, given your
Oh,
own spiritual journey and
lucky.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah,
Kim and I visited the place where she was born last year in Bingen,
yes.
Rhine in Germany. And there's a beautiful church where the Benedictine nuns sing several times a day, but they don't sing the Hildegard.
No.
Well, I asked the head of music there, why aren't why don't the nuns sing Hildegard? And she said, it's too hard. It's too hard for them. It is. It's sort of almost like operatic in proportion, really, because Saint Hildegard took the female voice higher than it had ever been. So she was very
Mhm.
radical, feminist, radical, amazing, Shakti woman, and she took the voice higher than it had ever been. So yeah, it's you want to have your high notes there. So yeah,
And so did you sing for them?
yes, yes.
Good. I'm pleased to hear that. I have heard you sing Hildegard, and it is incredibly. I find it quite transportive, actually. So I just want to back up a little bit with this. How do you prepare? So you've talked about how you feel like you're channeling, and also the sacredness of this of the well, of in this instance of Hildegard. But how do you prepare before you begin singing? What
Okay.
happens for you?
Well, I get a piece of music. It's a composition. Maybe not. It's not a composition. I've sung many pieces of music where, say, like working with Kim, where he says, "Oh, just sing that," and then I sing that. Oh, just sing that, and then I sing another thing, and then another thing, another thing. But to prepare to sing nicely, you really do need to warm up the voice because you are the instrument. Your whole body is your instrument. So there's some really nice scales you can do that kind of clear out the cobwebs of the day, all your thoughts, um, and just warming up the vocal cords, being prepared, even. But you know what? One of my teachers, and she had a great name. Her name was Eve Godley.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Fantastic.
fantastic woman. Oh my God, she was such a good teacher to me. And she said there's three things you have to remember as a singer. Oh, what are they? What are the three things? It's like technique, technique, and technique.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Meaning that whatever happens in your daily life, whether you're sick or you don't feel like it or whatever, you have your technique there and you can rely on your technique. So, and us musicians, we've all been in that. It's constant. It's not always perfect, your environment when you go to sing or record. So meaning like if you technically, you've warmed up, you know how to get the notes, you know how to make a beautiful legato, like a smooth sound, a smooth. One of my teachers once said to me, there's another teacher said there's two things that you must have, and that is an evenness of tone, an even tone in your voice, and a beauty in your voice. And I just love that.
Mm. Mm. I do think there's a beauty in your voice, Heather. You must have really imbibed what she said,
Oh,
because there's definitely a beauty in your voice. Um, I'm wondering if you could take us into a meditation at this point, and let's see where that leads us to.
okay. Thanks, Gabrielle. Bye. So let us all sit nice and comfortably. And you might like to, just as a little exercise, place your hands around your ribs and breathe in and feel your ribs expand. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. Let's do one more of those. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. And now you can place your hands comfortably back down, feel your shoulders relaxed. And you might like to gently keep your eyes open, just gently. And take some beautiful, relaxed breaths in and out. And let's all say together the Sanskrit word Om. We can all chant it, even though we won't hear each other sing together. We know that we're all together. Om, the vibrational sound of the universe, the ultimate Shakti. We're going to breathe in nice and relaxed. Om. 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 And that is the external Om. And then we're going to bring it into our inner world. And keep the Om keep the mantra of Om within you. And knowing that the whole universe, the vibration, we talked about vibration, the vibration of the external can be drawn into your own inner thought, and you can hold the whole universe in your soul. And ancient yogic breathing is very similar to the breathing we do as singers. We expand the breath. We hold the breath. And we let the breath out in a very controlled and very concentrated manner, using the breath using the golden thread of the breath. to guide us into meditation. It's a great tool, if we haven't meditated before, to start with the breath. And then after a while, lose the breath and go to the center of the forehead, feeling the golden light of vibration circling around and giving out light, the kind of light and vibration that connects us all, here tonight. And then we're going to come back into the body and take a nice big breath in. Hold it, feel your lungs expand and your ribs expand, and exhale slowly. Again. And slowly out. And let us place our hands together in prayer in front of our hearts. And we bow to the God within us and Almighty God that guides us in this life and beyond. Thank you.
It was a very lovely experience, Heather. I've never focused in such a concentrated way on my breath in a meditation, and I could really feel the benefit of it. And so thank you for sharing that with us. I don't think we've had anyone on Youniverse who's moved into a meditation by focusing on the breath and the chant of Om as well. In fact, it's inspired me to listen to some of your CDs because I know you do some excellent chanting. So thanks very much, Heather,
Thank you.
for that. Yeah. You're staying with us. We've got a Q&A coming up, so you'll be with us for that as well. But now let's hear from Kim. Kim, I think you too have had and continue to have too a very impressive career. And I'm drawn to your research field of inquiry, which is the role of music in making sense of our larger world. I kind of sense and think that many of us are trying to make sense of our larger world presently. So let's kick in with you. How is how is music and inner life interconnected for you? And how has the role of music helped you make sense of our larger world?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Gabrielle, for having us, and also thanks to everyone who's doing all the work behind the scenes to make this possible. And also, I wanted to say thanks to Heather because even though I've known Heather for over 30 years, every time she speaks, I learn something new, and
Oh,
that was such a treat for me. Um, so, for me to answer your question, I mean, I think the first realization at some point in our lives, we all know that there's more to life than the trappings of life. And that started to me when I was, I think quite young. I was a teenager when I first had that sense that the world wasn't as it might seem, and that started to really change me. I should also give you a little confession. I was born into quite a religious family in the Jewish religion, and my father came from a family of rabbis in the Eastern tradition, which is called the Mizrahi tradition. So there was a strong sense of, what we might call dismissively bhakti, but a very deep musical tradition was my childhood. And so really from the age of 3 or 4, I was chanting in Hebrew and Aramaic, and that was a fairly normal experience in my family and my community. So
wow.
this feeling of reading the Torah, reading
Yeah.
the Tanakh, all these ancient Jewish texts was really normalized in my life. And it was only when I started going to school that I realized other people didn't do it. And for a while it seemed very strange that I did it. And then, of course, it all goes around in a circle, doesn't it? So I had one of those journeys. But I think what it's a bit similar to Heather, music always affected me so greatly. I just remember that I was stopped in my tracks whenever I heard really good music. And even when I was a kid, I mean, my father was a bit of a snob, so there was no commercial music at all in my childhood and no television till I was a teenager. So I was sort of like not exposed to normality in a sense. But even when I'd hear something on the radio, the only songs I'd like on the radio at a friend's house would be the ones that would have a string arrangement. And so I
Mm.
realized that there was this vibrational aspect to music that I would respond to very, very quickly. And then if I cut to when I decided I wanted to be a musician, it was like searching for gold. You hear these stories of people who are looking for external gold, and they've got their Geiger counter and they go walking around the earth and they stick this and they start to hear something from the earth. And that was me. I started looking deeply at a number of spiritual traditions, so my own tradition of Judaism, but I started studying Buddhism and Hinduism and then all world religions because I was looking for that way into the divine abyss, not the abyss like Heather was talking about, but the abyss of nothingness, of emptiness that the Buddhists would say. But really, I was looking to see God in myself as I made music. And I remember it about, in the late teenage years, I had this vision, and I later learnt that this was a Kabbalistic teaching, that I was this fragmented piece of diamond that was cut off from God, and my life was just about reuniting. And that then became, well, how do I do that through music? And, of course, that's not an easy thing to do, but there has been that intention for me. And for me, I love to perform, but I love writing music because I think, actually, Heather talked about Hildegard of Bingen. She described herself as a feather on the breath of God. And I think, when I'm trying to write music, for me, it's like I'm trying to hear the underlying divine state of this universe in motion, which is the hand of God in this world. I think we can say that we can have a non-interventionist God that still governs the world in a sense. That's how music is for me, but it's also as life has gone on, I've realized that these artificial divisions between things like science and arts are more and more meaningless to me. Science is a great spiritual pursuit, and I'm fortunate I work with a lot of scientists. And I find two things. One is that uh, trying to mechanistically describe the world can lead to misery if we're not careful. Just trying to understand the world from its manifestations. We can never do that. So we will just exhaust ourselves. So we have to, at some point, bow down to the fact that some things are mysteries. But the other thing for me is that there's just such beauty in everything if we can only listen to it. And I'll tell you one little story of the moment that really changed it for me. I was a young composer, still finding my way. I'd done my music degree and I was starting to get commissions, and it was actually going okay. I was very happy with how I was traveling, but I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do because I wanted to be transforming myself in every act, and I was trying to get a way out of doing what we might call commercial music, to think, will the world support me to do what I really want to do, which is to try and heal the separation in myself and others. So one day I wake up in the middle of the night. This is before I started meditating with the Brahma Kumaris, but I would still regularly wake up in the middle of the night and meditate. It was just one of those things that happened. And the most beautiful tune came to me, so I started writing it down. And I loved that tune. And it became the basis of my first symphony, and I thought that was really great. But then a few years later, I heard a lost recording, or actually it was a recording of a lost manuscript from the Sibylline period of around 2,000 years ago. So it's one of the earliest Christian works, and it was by a great composer musicologist, Jordi Savall, who's been a great influence on my life. And there was my piece note for note. And I
Hmm.
realized at that point that, there is a world of miracles through music and I can play my small part in it. So that was the moment I needed to cast away from the shore of normality and to say that whatever my interests would be, which would from that point on only be things that were sacred in nature and transformative to me, and that would be enough. And I would just wait for the world to come to me for that.
I'm so pleased you had that moment, Kim, because you've given so much richness to the world in the way that you've brought your own transformation and the way you've expressed that through music to us all. So, you know, congratulations that you cast yourself into the ocean, so to speak, and set, left the shore of probably what would have been something that would have not held so much meaning for you. But I'm also quite um, intrigued that as with Heather, right from the start, you had an incredible interest in music. Um, and I think it sounds to me like it probably would have been very hard in your family to have, told your parents that you wanted to be a baker or an accountant or something, when if you've come from a family that's so musical and very clear on what that music's about. It's not about commercial, it's sacred. Um, so in many ways, a very big blessing, yeah?
Yeah, look, I mean, my childhood wasn't that dissimilar to Heather's. I mean, my father was a professional musician, and actually, my family were full of professional musicians. But for my dad, that was his day job, and but his whole thing was this whole sense of wonderment of chanting this, very old Iraqi musical tradition. That
Yeah.
that that was his thing. So for him to pass those tunes on to me was his number one goal in life. So that the lineage would continue. And but I had a memory at actually at about three. It's a bit like Heather when she was young. We had the piano tuner come to our house and started calling out flat, sharp to the piano tuner. And that was the point where they realized first I had perfect pitch and then absolute pitch because the piano tuner couldn't believe this thing. So I could tell him when it was like 2 cents out, which is the smallest measurement that a human ear can hear. And so without really knowing anything about music, I could sort of understand in a sense, the absolute mechanics of it. And it's just one of those things. It's sort of a party trick on one level but it certainly makes my life as a composer much easier because I do hear the pitch of every single thing in the world at every time. So when a bus goes past me, I hear the pitch. When I hear an ambulance, I hear the pitch. When I hear the wind, I hear the pitch. It's beautiful, but it's also exhausting, to be honest. Like so a big part of my life is that everything is literally music. So when I hear a bird call, I'm immediately, thinking that's for example, I heard a bird call recently and it was a B flat chord in second inversion. And I just went, oh, that's a B flat chord in second inversion. So for me, part of my daily life is to make sure that I don't get caught up in the intellectuality of that stuff because I could miss the real game, which is to
Yeah,
transform.
but that's
Mm.
you came with that. Obviously, that was there within the soul. That's a kind of perfect pitch. I'm trying to remember the conductor, and I can't think of her name, who sees color and that guides her pitch, which is also perfect. Maybe you know her. Do you see color, Kim, or is it just sound for you? Or is it sound for you, not just?
Yeah, I don't see the color, but it might not be the conductor but I know a conductor, an Australian conductor who works in the UK, Jessica Cottis, who's a synesthesiac. But there's stories that are some of the greatest composers would literally see every piece of music as a living painting. And this notion of
Mm.
synesthesia, synesthesiism is incredible. But I don't really see another sense. But what happens to me is I literally feel the vibration in my body, and it's almost scary. Because if
Mm.
the music's not working for me, I literally feel sick in a second. And it's probably the same for Heather. And we could say, God, that's hypersensitivity. But then we look at the research of someone like Masaru Emoto, the Japanese scientist, who gets distilled water, freezes it, and
Yes.
then exposes it to stimulus at -3 degrees. And we can literally see that water crystals take on the vibration of music perfectly. You know that there's other scientific things called somatics. Uh, Recently, I sent some music to a lab in Cambridge where they're actually looking at how do we stimulate cells at that moment where they might go cancerous or might not to different types of music. So there's so much research that can be done in an empirical sense to know what our heart knows. That music is possibly the thing that, that influences our vibration more than anything else.
Yes, yes. And what about your the work that you're doing with Sounds of Space project? I mean, in your opening comments, you talked about the division between science and music, and you seem to bring it all together, which is very Renaissance of you. Um, so tell us a little bit about the Science of Space project and what that means to you vibrationally.
Sure. Well, everything comes for a reason. I'd done a little bit of dabbling, but good dabbling. I remember about maybe 15, 20 years ago, I did some concerts where I wired up the brain of a physicist. So this is what I did before the Sounds of Space. And we looked at his brain waves, and I realized that music could affect his brain waves in real time. So I started doing concerts where people could actually follow the human brain as it was being, stimulated by music. And that was really good. That ended, and I was thinking, what can I do in a similar sort of space? And then when I joined the ANU, the vice chancellor, who was an astrophysicist, said, "I'd like you to do some work in this field." So I thought, well, you don't say no to your vice chancellor. So I started to think, what will happen? And then I got this call from the British Antarctic Survey, and they're a really interesting place because their main work is in Antarctica, of course, and they do this work of digging at the ice cores that are the actual measurement of CO2 in the world's atmosphere. So when we think of the IPCC, and it says this is the absolute formula of climate change that's taken place since industrialization. It's the ice cores that are usually taken from the Antarctic Survey. So that's one part of their work. But they also have in the basement this thing called the Space Weather Unit. And this is the coolest unit you could imagine because basically they look at all the things that are happening in space, how it can become sound, how it could influence things like satellites. So there's obviously a lot of money to be saved if they can do space weather forecasts, just as they would do weather forecasts. But they have a real love of what's called the sonification of space sounds. Now, space is an almost complete vacuum, but it's possible for things like gravitational waves and electromagnetic waves to actually either be converted into sound or in some cases actually be sound. And so the project goes everything. We have a giant receiver in Antarctica at the Halley Station, which is a 50-meter square orthogonal receiver. And that's like a giant TV dish in the quietest part of the globe that captures literally, well, the artistic description is the sound of the planet breathing. It's actually everything from a lightning strike to the magnetosphere. So part of my work there was setting those sounds, which are really beautiful. And they were sitting in the archives till I managed to discover them. So it was incredible fun to work with those. But then, thanks to the connections of the Antarctic Survey, I get to compose with all sorts of incredible sounds as they go. And possibly the most incredible was the gravitational waves. People might remember that they were hypothesized by Einstein about 100 years ago, and then they were discovered in 2015 in the LIGO interferometer. And it's an amazing thing because the sound of it, I'll just sing you what the sound was. It was actually, but the exact interval, what is called a diminished fifth, the most dissonant interval in Western music was the sound of the first captured gravitational wave. And this was an acoustic phenomenon captured. So it's incredible. This traveled through, and it's the sound of two black holes merging. So for me to work with these things, to realize that Pythagoras on one level was right, that there actually is a sound in space, that the celestial orbs actually do make a sound. The only thing is, in order to hear it in our tiny little ears, we might have to time compress it so that 3 weeks or even 3 months happens in 30 seconds, and we might have to transpose it up 8, 12 octaves because it's like it's on a scale that is just so vast to what a human can comprehend. So a lot of the work is getting it so a human can hear it, and then actually composing with it. And it's an incredibly moving thing for me. Probably another thing that really moved me was when I first heard when Voyager, they actually, Voyager did two incredible things. It took this gold record to say, in case we encounter another civilization of some sort in space, we should have a curation of, our highest art. And there's some really beautiful music on that gold record. But it also took a little microphone. And so it was actually able, when it went past Jupiter and Saturn, it was able to capture these incredible sounds of the solar wind when they actually go into these gravitational forces of these two amazing gas giants. Those sounds to me were incredibly moving. But right now, I've just finished an album that we're just releasing right now on the sounds of all the little moons. You might have heard these stories that NASA's been finding all these different moons, and uh, and so we've been converting those into human hearing, and they honestly sound like science fiction music brought to life. But that's it; they're perfect as they are. So sometimes I have no idea what to do because they're so beautiful as they are.
Wow, I mean, this is so hugely fascinating, and it's not commonly known, I'm sure. Um, it's unusual to have this kind of conversation, really, Kim. So tell us about Jupiter. What does that sound like?
Okay, well, the best way to describe it is it's it has very dissonant intervals, what it comes in, and it has a recurring sort of like a loop of sound that it goes, because basically you're getting the solar wind going like this, and then it meets this almost unstoppable force, which is this incredible gravitational field of Jupiter. Some of it sounds like a sort of sound, and then
Uh,
some of the sounds are like almost like if you know the instrument, the theremin. Some
mhm.
of it sounds like the sound of a theremin playing. And when I do a series of lectures with the Antarctic Survey and sometimes without them, I was fortunate in my last job in Australia, I'd travel with our Indigenous astronomy unit and we'd go and talk about Indigenous astronomy and the sounds of space together. And for people to hear those sounds, they imagined it was almost like the sound of the avant-garde in the 1950s, and that's how we could understand it. If you think about the most dissonant music that humans wrote after World War II, that's the
Mm.
sound of summer space. Well, that's the sound of Jupiter anyway. And some of it can be really, really beautiful. And some of it is really, really sparse and incredibly beautiful. Like, for example, pulsars when they spin. A pulsar is, of course, this incredible phenomenon. The energy that goes can be the energy of our sun, but it's in the size of Sydney. So just imagine that for a second. And they are like clockwork. They're literally like making a noise in space when we convert it that is like tick, 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 like so
Mm.
there's this incredible symmetry. It just leads us to think about, there's this theory, Gaia theory. This is my own personal take because the scientists would disagree with me. But it just says to me that there's some consciousness in everything. That's
Yes,
what that's
yes.
what working with science says to me, that we can't get away with it. And if we think with the great Indian physicist Chandra Bose, who was around at the turn of the 20th century when a lot of these discoveries were being made in the West, used to say that. So in India, this sort of like this notion of, I guess you'd say, spiritual hard sciences has been, it's been going obviously since, the early days of Indian civilization. It's not so wacky to think about that when you're talking to Indian researchers, but it can be a little bit wacky in the West. But I just
Mm.
finished that thought with saying that there's a whole universe out there, but I think what we also know is there's a whole universe inside. And so the other part of my work is I set up microphones underwater in remote parts of the world, and I just listen to the earth and compose with that. And my most recent thing with the Antarctic survey is I sent down a series of microphone arrays with their research team this year, and that's just come back, and I've got the most exquisite sounds from Antarctica. So the project it just keeps on giving. We've done 7 albums. We'll probably do another 3 before the project finishes. And if anyone wants to check it out, you can just Google literally Sounds of Space Project and you can see all of that project.
That is so rich, Kim, incredibly rich. And I'm left wondering how you cope with the sound of a bus or an ambulance or a fire engine or something like that when you're listening to these celestial sounds and deep ocean sounds and so on. It it could be a bit challenging, yeah?
Yep. Well, to use an Indian metaphor, Indians of almost every belief, but particularly Hindus and those from the Brahma Kumaris also share this belief to a great extent, that we're in a, that uh, the universe itself is cyclic, just like the weather and the seasons. And it could be said that we are in the Iron Age in Kali Yuga, the time of great dissonance and destruction. And so for me, I certainly like to listen to the ugly, so-called ugliness of the universe and realize that these are actually the sounds of our times. Now, for example, in the last 100 years, the speed in which music has played has almost doubled. Isn't that astonishing?
Yeah, that is
100 years
astonishing.
ago, the
Yeah.
average piece of music, if I put my thing like and I feel my pulse, that's how we used to compose 100 years ago. We would go faster than that, but it was all about, I mean, essentially we didn't have the same mechanisms to look at, really fast music and subdivide it. But if you buy a computer and make music now, it comes in at 120 beats per minute as the standard, and the human pulse rate is about 65, 66. So we can see that the starting point for music, lots of music is 160, 180 beats per minute now. So as we know, life has got fast and a bit out of control for many of us. So has music. But yet at the same time, there's research that says in order to actually slow ourselves down, if we just force ourselves to slow down straight away, it sometimes can be like a really hard stop, like you in a car when you brake too fast. So some of the latest research in musicology says that actually the best way to do it is to slow down gradually. And so these are the things that I love doing in my work, is to think about how can I, as a spiritual being, match, some of this latest research and put it into practice, hopefully in my own life.
So music is some music is making us speed up and hype up, and equally other music is bringing us back to a more natural state of being. Is that what you're saying there?
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And we
Yeah.
can be the curators of those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Words. We should be so careful of what we listen to, as careful as what we might eat.
Yes, 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 I get that. That's really lovely. Look, I'd like the audience to see a little bit of your work, Kim. Can you introduce us to the dance of life, and then we're going to show it?
Yes, look, the Dance of Life is a piece that actually had two. This is what sometimes happens with my work. It has two or three iterations. It started work as actually the final piece for something Heather and I worked on together, which was the Maharaja of Jodhpur's Sacred Art Collection. And scoring that was an absolute delight because the works were so beautiful. If you've ever been to Rajasthan and seen the art, it's incredibly beautiful. And I wanted a piece that was called The Cosmos because this exhibition was called Garden and Cosmos, and that really explored this Hindu notion of the greatness and the grandness of the heavens. Uh, but at the same time, the initial idea for that came when one of the great spiritual teachers of the Brahma Kumaris, Daddy Prakashmani, actually left the body. And so I had these two inspirations in my mind when the piece was written. And I was also fortunate at the time. I was given a commission to work with South India's leading flautist, Dr. Nathasan Ramni, who was coming here for the Womadelaide Adelaide Festival. So all these things came together in that one piece. Heather sang a really beautiful Om Shanti at the end of it. And that was that piece. And then a number of years later, a filmmaker came and said, I'm doing a piece for two of the retiring uh, dancers of the Australian Ballet. We just want to make something incredibly beautiful, the most beautiful thing we can think of making. And we're going to project it on the great hall of Sydney University for the Vivid Festival. Do you have something? And that's what the Dance of Life became. And it was a really amazing experience for me because we beamed it onto the Great Hall in this thing called triptych. So you saw the dancers being 50-foot high dancing in front of you while we had a mega loudspeaker system playing the piece. So we're going to actually have a feed of that direct experience rather than the actual recording.
So let's go to it. Something worth watching for sure. what an amazing experience that was to watch, very ethereal. And Heather, I was loving the way that you came in at the end with that sacred chanting. Kim, when you created that, what was happening with you in terms of your relationship with the divine? Did you feel any kind of uh, inspiration from the divine when you were creating that piece?
You know, there was a bit of longing, deep longing in that because I mentioned briefly before that, one of the great spiritual teachers I've ever met in this life, Daddy Prakashmani, had recently died. And it's sort of hard, there's sadness and there's also happiness. I always like to think of that Indian notion that we should celebrate when someone leaves the body and, in a sense, commiserate when they're born. The opposite to how we are in the West, because, if the soul is eternal, it's liberated from the body. But I was still a bit sad. So I got up for my early morning meditation. And that's how after my early morning meditations, I wrote that score. So when I was still in as much of a pure state as I could be in my mind. And it was a really nice experience. But what's really interesting about scoring is you're in this tiny little world by yourself until you realize it and record it. Like you have this thing, it's like a flower behind a case. And then only when you record it does it become what we see as music. There's a picture of the music, which is the score, and then it becomes that other thing. So for me, it's making the score as beautiful as possible, even though only myself and the musicians see it, and then trying to realize it as beautifully as possible. There were the two things. So a bit like what Heather said, um, you know, I of course I feel I would like to hope that every moment is part of a divine connection, but that old notion of chopping wood is the same as chopping wood. In every day that are the the physical things of actually writing a piece of music also have to just be done like that. And I really like that balance because being in the world and doing those things certainly just stops me ever getting a bit ungrounded.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I get that. Thanks, Kim, with that. Heather, just listening to you chanting Om in there, are there universal tones that are believed to elevate consciousness across cultures?
Are there universal tones?
That are believed to elevate consciousness across cultures? Like Kim's spoken about consciousness,
Mm.
and I'm thinking there
Uh,
must be some kind of universal tone
yeah,
there that.
oh,
Um,
prayers and with the intentions of the words in music, the universal tones for those mantras and all. But
it would.
I was taught to sing in bel canto manner, which is beautiful singing, which means pure vowels, which means the purity of the vibration of a vowel well placed can become that too, hopefully.
Yeah, I no look, I can hear that in your voice anyway. But um, so is that what creates the healing frequency um, in music, the purity of the vibration? Can you tell us, talk to us and Kim as well about the healing frequencies and the meditative sound journeys and mantras and how they all interconnect? Because music definitely has a healing component to it, yes. When I think about what you were saying around, our pulses, it's twice the speed music is now for our pulse, and yet, 100 years ago it was the pulse rate measured the music, and so it has that capacity to hype us
Mm.
up and cool us down. So what about healing, the healing frequencies of music?
Um, I think perhaps we need to surrender to the sound in order for the healing to open up. Surrender to just let it be and let the vibration wash over you and open up that part of your consciousness and allow the healing to happen. Um, you know, so
Mm.
maybe we need guidance in that way, if someone guides us through with the music and tells us what to do. Like with kirtan, for instance, it's It's call. The musicians sing the chant and then call and respond. And the participants are asked to respond to what you've called out. And that is a really nice way of doing it. That's a healing way. I mean, people love kirtan.
Mm, mm, mm. What about you, Kim? Have you witnessed moments where music's really facilitated healing?
Oh, just so many. I mean, it sounds
Mm,
terrible to say that, but
mm,
actually so many. I mean, we've had moments in some of our concerts where people have had, really deep experiences, and we're really happy to have shared it with them where they've suddenly had, you know, hopefully quite good inner transformations where they've seen light or shift. I remember after one concert, someone was just ecstatic because their child took their first step to one of our pieces. There's all of this sort of stuff. But then there's also the healing of doing music that brings people together. So it's both vibrational and also, in a sense, sociological. Now, we did a project about 20 years ago where Foundation gave us the money to bring together a whole bunch of Israeli or Jewish and Arabic musicians from around the world to take them to the New York and rehearse for a week and put on a concert and make a recording. And the healing that went on for the audience of that was astonishing, absolutely astonishing, because the music was incredibly beautiful. And it
mm,
was a bit like the Edward Said Daniel Barenboim East-West Divan Orchestra, but all with, some incredible traditional musicians and some very good classical musicians all coming together. And so that was both the intention to suspend, the dissonances between peoples through music, which I think is one of the great things music can do. When we can't talk, we can still play. This is one of the best things that music enables us to do. When there's conflict, the last thing left is music. I have an ex-student, for example, who's a really amazing oud player. He's actually now in Sudan, and he takes his oud to de-radicalize jihadist youth. You
wow.
know, so this is what music can do. It can
Mm,
actually, in that political, sociological sphere, can do something incredible. But we're also knowing that without the really deep inner thing, all of that's a facade. We can spend a lifetime doing things in the political world, but we may not be healed ourselves. And that's, I think, what music can do. And there's two parts that make it for me. One is the intention of the musician. I think is important that, as we know, every action of ours, a good action with a bad motivation is possibly still not a completely clean action. And even when we make a mistake with the pure motivation, it's amazing how the world can forgive us so often. I think it's the same with music. But then there's a big debate, which I'm going to ask everyone to make up their own minds. Is music what we call an absolute thing or a relative thing? Now, in ancient India, in ancient China, in so much of the world before the Enlightenment, we believed music was absolute, that certain sounds would actually affect the soul in certain ways, and some things would make us grow and some things would make us shrink. And there are so many sciences. The raga system is possibly the best documented, but really, all scales were based on this notion of healing the human form and bringing it to the divine through music. And this is the history really until 300 or 400 years, until modern times, essentially.
The ragas.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
ragas.
the ragas.
But what's happened now is we have a sense that actually everything is relative. But then we also have this notion of the great composer. So you go to a symphonic concert and people have the most incredible experience. We were recently hearing the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra play Vaughan Williams and the Lark Ascending, and that's a piece that transforms people to the core. So there's pieces that in this relative world that can soothe us to the highest degree. I remember that was an experience for me when I first heard modern composers who were writing spiritual music, scored music. It was like I could see myself, and I could see that
mm,
there's a future for myself in the world as well as in a
mm,
yogic sense. And
mm.
so I think it's possible to be both, but our experience is so different from person to person. Some people will feel that and others won't, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. They do say that music is one of the world's pure languages, like mathematics. And I think you've highlighted that really beautifully in the example you gave of conflicting people in conflict coming together and connecting through music. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
I want to
uh,
throw into this equation before we go into a meditation together, is this whole role of AI. in simulated music and where this fits into it all, because we've been talking about very authentic people-made music, and the vibration, the frequency, the healing capacity, the connecting capacity, and so on. And now we have on our horizon, or not on the horizon, right with us actually, AI. So your take on that, Kim and Heather?
I might start because in my day job, this is being hotly discussed. Now, for example, I heard a PhD presentation at the end of last year where the first piece of music was completely AI generated. This is just emerging. This idea of actually putting in, like, at the moment, you can't type into Chat GPT, write me a song in a reggae style at 100 beats per minute with a male voice. We will be able to do that in about 5 years, which is really weird, isn't it? But what we can do right now is we have what's called samples and synthesis of music. Now, for example, um, I could buy a $500,000 Steinway piano if I had $500,000, but I actually don't have $500,000. But what I can do is I can play off my $100 keyboard a recording of that $500,000 Steinway piano. Isn't that incredible? That's been around for about 20 years.
And it does sound really good.
Yeah, it's not the same, and we lose a bit of this vibrational force. This
Yeah.
is one thing that has hit music like an earthquake, because on one level it's incredible because it means a child in a bedroom has actually access to, I mean, for example, Mendelssohn, who was a 19th century composer from a very rich family, the parents bought him an orchestra essentially in order to learn to compose off when he was a kid. They were just really wealthy. But now anyone can buy a sample of the orchestra for, $400. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So something that was only available to about three people in the world 150 years ago is actually available to any middle class person in the West and even a lot of people in the developing world. So there's something incredible about this. But at the same time, what it also means in this AI generation of music means that we're generating it without understanding what we're generating. And I think that so the danger is twofold. One is that we generate it blindly and then we just create a sea of noise around us. In other words, we actually take away the power of silence. And I think we know that when you go shopping, there's music in when you park your car in the shopping center, there's music now. It's like we're so scared of actually hearing ourselves in the natural world that we put something together. So that's one of the things that will happen. And I guess the second one that will happen is we certainly will put artists out of work. I mean that, and so we'll have to come to terms with what it means for an integrated society like Australia or a developed society, which if we use that term, what happens when artists actually are no longer needed for some of that stuff. I think the very highest stuff we'll still need artists for because we'll know that hearing people make music live, that miraculous nature of Heather pulling down the divine when she sings, you're not going to get that from a sample. And funnily enough, when they were just getting into AI about 10 years ago, Heather was approached by one of the leading companies to be an AI classical singer, which she politely declined. It's a so we've had some first-hand experience, and some of my instruments I've actually sampled, some of my non-Western instruments. And so if for example, my oud, my balama, my tanpura, and my harmonium, they're probably the best samples of those instruments in the world. And so when you have if you hear TV or film music and you're hearing those instruments, there's probably about a 20% chance you're listening to my actual instruments being played by someone else's keyboard. Now, how weird is that?
And who profits, I guess, is the next question as well.
Yes.
I'm intrigued to know whether the healing could be the same, but maybe that's
Yeah,
something for us to wait and see. Mm.
yeah.
It's surprisingly intact. It's not the same. That's my quick answer.
Mm.
These synthetic forms of music making, they're not the same. It's like there's a layer of plastic around the
Mm.
musical experience, but the plastic is getting thinner with every new generation of technology. That's how we would describe it.
But
Mm.
Gabrielle, you were talking about goosebumps. You
Yes, yes.
will you get goosebumps from AI
No, you
music?
would. I completely agree. You would not get goosebumps. I think there's my view, I've listened to quite a bit of AI music and I think I've noticed the plasticity of it. And I haven't been told it's AI actually. So I went in not knowing it was AI. But I do think there's something very real that in the way that we connect through music and live music
Human
with real people.
exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the vibration that we might. that
Yeah.
we'll miss
But
out on. Mm.
But I did a test last year for a conference, and I found a 1970s recording of Debussy's Clair de Lune, which is a really beautiful piece of piano music. Dee, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da. It's a very famous piece of classical piano music. It's so beautiful. So I had this 1970s recording, and then I did a version on my little keyboard doing a fake piano, and then I put it through a fake tape machine, a fake reverberance, a fake concert hall, and I played it, and 50% of the people preferred my fake version.
Oh, oh.
And I did that to see, and I want, because I think what we often see is these tools of AI being done without consciousness. So what I wanted
Yeah.
to do was to see if I put my consciousness and everything I'm capable of into that, is it translatable? And my short for my n equals one experiment, in other words, I've done one little experiment,
Mm.
and my feeling was to some extent it can be transferred. That gives me incredible hope, everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm. So the consciousness with which we make the AI will determine
at
the
least, I mean,
consciousness and
Yeah, because
vibration of the end product. Mm.
after AI will be able to transport, us musicians will be able to be transported anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, look, on this note, and it's an undetermined one, but let's have a live commentary from you, Kim, and you can transport us wherever you like in a commentary together. How about that?
okay. Friends, let's sit quietly, nice straight back, soft breath, softening the eyes. And as we breathe, we just give thanks for this incredible miracle of being alive. Here am I, this wondrous point of light, this soul in a body, breathing in and breathing out, breathing in love and breathing out peace. In love, out peace. In love, out peace. And as we breathe, could we remember a beautiful piece of music we once heard? Through the miracle of our imagination, listen to it again. That incredible opening. And be aware, how do I feel as I remember this piece of music? And I go back in time in an instant, listening. And as I listen, I'm going to imagine, is there a source above all of this, a wondrous point of light, the source of the vibration of all music? And I turn my gaze to you, this beautiful source. I open my body, my subtle body, and I receive. Play me your music. May I be transformed. May I be healed. May I be one with you. And in just a second, we'll seal our little practice. I'm going to speak one of the beautiful mantras that we've talked about today. And then we'll breathe and all sing Om together. So I'm going to sing it with Heather. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamazoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Shri Gurave Namaha Om. Lead us from unreal to real, darkness to light, immortality and peace in this life. And we all bow to our teacher with you. Om Shanti.
Kim, thank you for that. Thank you very much. It was certainly transporting me, and I love the way you asked us or invited us into remembering a piece of music that we particularly liked. So thank you for that, and to both of you too. Our thanks and blessings for sharing in a really personal way, in an intimate way, your music journey, the way you've explored music, the way you've explored healing and sound, and it's really been an enriching conversation, and I've really deeply appreciated the powerful glimpse that it was almost like the glimpse into your very special talents, your exceptional talents, and the life that you share together, and in doing that, the contribution you make to our world. So, a very big thanks to both of you, and thank you for joining us on Youniverse tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Om Shanti.
Viewers, we've been listening to Heather Lee and Kim Cunio sharing their insights on music and inner life. And if you'd like to subscribe to Open Your Eyes to the Universe and receive monthly updates, please email us at special.events@au.brahmakumaris.org. And as I close out tonight, I'd like to remind you about I Meditate at 180 George Street in the Sydney CBD. It's every Thursday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., free of charge, and our doors are open to everyone seeking some tranquility and personal growth, a bit of space, drop-in meditation during your busy schedules on Thursdays. And as we close out tonight, we're going to play the Cosmos. And that's featuring both Heather and Kim. And nearly 25 years ago, Kim wrote this piece for the ABC and the Art Gallery of New South Wales for a series on Buddhism and Buddha Radiant Awakening exhibition with Heather and the Tibetan nomadic singer Tenzin Kogil. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Do you want to jump in there, Kim, and pronounce it correctly? There we go. Thank you. So let's listen to this as we close out. And may the echoes of today's conversation just resonate in your own journey towards clarity and peace and purpose. And so until next time, may your inner symphony be one of harmony, and may your silence be full of sacred sound. Take care and walk lightly on this earth. Om Shanti.
We're in the clear.